Welcome, everyone, to Touching Base. I'm your host, Eric Arnold, and today I'm joined by my friends Andy Enck, Joe Olson, and Andrew Naw. Gentlemen, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, thanks.
Thirsty.
Yeah, thirsty. Well, as you guys know, this is an episode where we always get together once a week. Due to COVID and everything else, and traveling and distance, we don't get a chance to see each other as much as we used to. So we kind of made an excuse to talk to each other and share a beer. So the ever important question: what are you guys drinking tonight?
You do that voodoo. Voodoo Ranger for me. One of my go-tos.
Absolutely. Nah?
I'm actually violating the code and drinking some bourbon tonight. Bullet bourbon, just after my swanky weekend in New York City where I was drinking Grey Goose on the rocks. I thought I would step it up a little bit here with some bourbon rocks.
Well, it's going to be hard to step up. Andy, what are you drinking?
I got this fruit tart by Mully's Brewery. It's delicious, kind of like fruity flavor to it, some sourness to it. And I'm going to follow that with this Papa Juice Blonde. After probably halfway through the show, you hear a little click of that one going off. You know what it is. And I'm going to give an absolutely special shout out because I, for like the third or fourth week in a row, am also going with the Mully's. And I'm going with their standard Blood Orange Blonde, one of their top sellers like every single year. I've had it probably several years in a row. And because of it, we actually got a reach out from people over at Mully's. We got Cindy and Josh who graced two of us. They gave enough beer for all four of us. However, someone being in New York and someone being in Virginia, it was a little tough to get that to you. So sadly, we're going to have to drink it for you. I hope you guys don't mind. But Andy and I were gifted some of these, and I got to tell you, I am super excited about it. Because like I said, this is one of my all-time favorites. Whenever this thing starts opening back up and I get a free weekend, I know I'm going to go down to Mully's and enjoy some music, enjoy some of their home brews.
I do mind, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
Okay, fair. I'll drink yours. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. Sad news, though. We have to pour one out. Andrew, and I see you're wearing black tonight. And I'm assuming that is for the Washington Capitals. I really, really thought we were going to have another discussion on this, where we were going to be talking about Game 7 coming up. We were going to be talking about, what we're going to do, next round. What's the tournament looking like for us? So what the hell happened?
Yes, I am in mourning, but only for a little while because now I don't have to be stressed out and I can enjoy hockey. I was watching a little bit of
your heart is happy.
Yeah, my cardiologist, that I don't have a cardiologist, but they'd be happy. But yeah, I watched a little bit of Penn's Isles. I was peeking at one of the Western Conference games last night as well. Much more enjoyable. What happened? So I think what had happened is the Caps that I was expecting in games 1 and 2 showed up in games 3, 4, and 5, right?
Yep.
Guys that were really banged up. Like I think their entire first power play unit had probably pretty significant injuries. And then you have a guy like Kuznetsov who had an inconsistent season but missed some time with COVID again. You had the goalkeeping situation. And then, Ilya Samsonov came in game 3 after Craig Anderson got a maintenance day in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Different, but when you're 84 years old, I mean, you kind of have
That's
to.
what happened. He turned 40 and they didn't need him anymore.
Yeah. So, and Samsonov did great, kept him in the game, made some really nice saves. He didn't look at a place. I don't think he lost it for him. He gave up a sloppy one Sunday night. But he certainly didn't lose it for him. And then there was the issue with game 3. Maybe you can argue that he lost that one, but there was just a bad exchange behind the net in the Cap zone, and
double overtime.
Craig Smith came away with it and just dumped it, and that was the game. Game 3, and then subsequently, basically no-showed game 4 and game 5. They were a little bit feistier in game 5, but only came away with a goal.
I'm going to bring up two things there because one, game 4, actually, I didn't think they showed up as bad as what people thought they did. They out-hit them. They outshot them. They won more faceoffs. And I know that, they outshot them like 41 to 20 something. Now I know that the quality of shots were not nearly as good and nothing was getting rebounded. There was no screening in front or anything like that. They essentially just shot it into the chest and hoped for the best. And that wasn't working out for them.
So what it was is that Boston played just absolute phenomenal from whistle to whistle, incredible defensive hockey, right? We talked about it last week, clogging up the center of the Caps of the offensive zone. Caps can't move the puck laterally. it just like everything was hard.
Could they not move it laterally because of the injuries or because of the age? I mean,
No, everybody wants to say age. Everyone, somebody
it was a shortened season. They should have been fresh. I mean, like, yes, they were the oldest team in the NHL. It's got to factor in.
It doesn't. It doesn't. That shouldn't suck up their offense, right? Like, Chara's 112 years old. But like after that, like Ovechkin and Backstrom are up there. But like, we joked in pre-show about gymnastics age. Like in hockey age, they're still not that old yet. Sure, they're not 26-year, 24-year-old, whatever Connor McFlurry, running around doing all that. But like they're not, what Yager was and what even Kovalchuk was like in the latter stages when he came back from the KHL. Like they're not like, and everybody wants to talk about their age and wants you got to shake things up. Who are you really going to take a guy like Nick Backstrom out of your lineup for? Even like they have Connor McMichael, they have a couple of young.
Yeah, but he's 2 years old. He's 20 years. He's not quite there yet. I mean,
yeah, and who are you taking out of the lineup? Like I get it, but like.
All right, so that's what I want to ask. I do think the age played a factor because I think age plays a factor into injuries. I do think that the body was worn down, a little bit. I do think if they had played a longer season, which they're planning on doing next year, it's not going to get any better. I mean, so I do think that there's only a few players they can look at, and this is what I want you guys to kind of debate, because you're right. I mean, we've talked about the Kraken coming out and who they're going to expose, but there's also some tradable pieces out there, and I just want like a quick reaction from you guys. One, TJ Oshie said today that he wants to be a Capital for the rest of his life. This is where he wants to retire. I want him to be a Capital because that is a emotional decision, not a logical decision based on his production and stuff like that. But I still love the guy. He does TJ Oshie things. He played center when they didn't play center. He's a fan favorite. I'd love to have him around. Kuzi is out there as an option, and then so those two are kind of the expected ones. The one that I'm curious about, because you said it, I don't think they can get any value for, trading a Backstrom. I don't think they're going to trade Ovi. He's a free agent. I don't see that happening. But what about someone like a Tom Wilson? Would you trade him?
No.
Neither. But
I mean, the whole 29 teams, 30 teams are angry at him because they can't have him.
Exactly.
I don't think you do. And like, there's plenty of talk. There's been talk through a few coaching staffs, and like others have come out and said it, and other kind of settings is that like Wilson's the next captain. Now granted, Ovi may, Russian machine never breaks, so Ovi may play another 10 years, and that would probably be a little bit different. But like, if for some reason Ovi goes back to the KHL, and I'm not saying he's going to do that, but like if he went back to the KHL in 6 weeks, Tom Wilson's the captain, right? Like that's a pretty strong belief in that.
Joe,
so I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Wilson is also much younger than Ovi. Like Ovi is 36, and so I mean, I don't have any reason to believe he's going to go back to the KHL either. I do believe he's got something left in the tank, and even though he was playing, he definitely was more banged up towards the end of this year than he has been in a lot of previous years.
His leg, right? Or I mean, his leg, or he was playing like on a broken leg, essentially. I thought.
Right, and I mean, it didn't show in every aspect of the game, but he also didn't make the meaningful impacts that you would expect a player of his caliber to make, in this portion of the season. And so I definitely agree that Tom Wilson is definitely next in line. I do expect that Ovi will be back in the Caps uniform next year. As far as TJ Oshie, I think there's just a lot of options on the table. He doesn't have the deep-rooted Caps roots that Ovi or Backstrom or somebody like that does, but I do think that there's some interesting options on the table if they wanted to explore something else with him other than bringing him back next year. He's definitely, I think he's the most overall talented offensive player on their team right now. I think that that's probably up for debate, but he's definitely in the top couple of them, and I think that their team is better with him. Just as far as Tom Wilson goes, though, I mean, whatever you say about his stats, Andrew hit it on the head. Nobody wants to play against him, and he's the spiritual leader in that locker room. And so I think they would be nuts to do anything except for keep him for the long term. And so, whatever happens with him next year, they're definitely going to look a little different. But I like the main core of them still coming back for at least one more year.
Andy Enck?
Yeah, the thing about, especially with signing with old players, like doing those legacy signings where he's been loyal to us, he needs to stay in our team. I think the important piece with that is you have to have somebody coming behind him to take his place on one game's notice, because if you sign these old players, they get older and you have nobody ready to take their place. You're just stuck with these old players, these contracts with nobody to step up when those players, when you get older, like you said earlier, the injury piece, any game, that could be their last game or for the season or beyond even.
Well, I think what I do is I try to move Kuzi. I think I'd rather protect Oshie than Kuzi,
Yeah,
quite honestly.
absolutely.
Kuzi's had some reliability issues this year with COVID. That's pretty, atypical of a regular
Kind
year.
of a knucklehead, right? I mean, like,
And he's a little bit of a knucklehead, and he's had some inconsistencies on the ice and off the ice, right? He has a bigger cap hit than Oshie off the top of my head. I'd have to double check on that.
probably not going to get the same value, that you
Well,
would
but
get.
then, that's if I mean, you may be a situation where, like, right, they did a lot of wheeling and dealing in front of the Vegas expansion draft, right? Like, maybe I send Seattle another asset or a pick or something and say, hey, take this contract off our hands. And also it's a really good player.
Right.
And then that's the other thing, like, I have to go back and look at, aside from like Fleury, what contracts Vegas took in that draft. Because you have cap space, but you don't want to take, Kuzi's
Still
something like
making
$7+
bucks. I mean,
million.
you're still looking for value pieces.
Yeah, and Kuzi's a $7 million like cap hit, something like $7 million plus cap hit.
He's got a few more years on that thing, doesn't he? I mean,
yeah, and probably another 4 years, I think I saw recently. So I'd say he's definitely a target to be moved one way or the other, whether it's the expansion draft, whether it's via probably 60 cents on the dollar kind of trade. Somebody else I'd keep an eye out for too is Dmitry Orlov. He still has a couple of years at probably 5 and change. Now, he was their best defenseman in the playoffs and probably their best defenseman for most of the year. So there could be a situation where they don't want to move him either, but not that they're in cap hell, but if they want to retool the middle six to bottom six and a couple things in the back end, they're going to have to move some salary.
now I know that the Golden Knights essentially went a little bit older than most people would normally go, but they also had immediate success. So I guess my question to you guys is, how much pressure is there on Seattle to be good right away?
More than there should be, probably. And then I'll go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit of pressure, but honestly, if they come out and they're not very good the first year, I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it's just more of a victory for the city than anything else. I don't think that anybody can ever expect a Golden Knights scenario where they make Stanley Cup Finals their very first year in the league. That's just ridiculous, and I think that most people would agree that that's a fluke. I think that there is a huge appetite for NHL hockey in the upper Northwest, and that Seattle's just going to be happy no matter what happens. And I do think because of cap hits and everything else that they're going to get some good players, and they probably will be competitive. So, I mean, I would be surprised if they're bottom dwellers for very long, even if they start there.
And coaches always seem to think like he'd be different with me. I could get him under control. So I'd be interested to see, do they take a knucklehead that they might not normally take? Just out of I want to be. I'm better than that. You'll see.
Those coaches are the same guys who go to strip clubs and say the stripper really likes me. She
Right.
Really likes
Right. We're from the same hometown. She's working on her degree. I'm rooting for her.
He's also Russian.
Also.
So I think with the one last caveat, like around Kuzi, I think whenever it comes, however it goes, I think there's going to be some salary retained. I think it's just a big number for anybody to take on.
Yep. All right, so that's kind of what we would do. We'll kind of see how that plays out for the rest of this off season. I guess we have a little bit of time to wait for that. Go ahead.
I think we should. I was just saying. I think we should kind of bring that back around late June, kind of right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Off in the expansion draft, we'll have another quick chat on it. But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this will not be the last Caps conversation. I promise you can break out the Caps jersey again at some point. One of the later podcasts. Okay, I promise. Okay, I wouldn't lie.
You can't unburn it, so be careful, Andrew.
I a little too expensive to burn. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that being said, we're going to talk about your favorite topic. I'm going to do you a favor right now. And your favorite sport, the sport of golf.
Yeah.
Phil Mickelson had himself a weekend.
He's left-handed.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I would have guessed that. Joe, you're our golfer. What the heck happened with Phil? I barely watched, but even I was interested in this past weekend. Tell us what happened with Phil.
Well, I'm going to have to look up some stuff because Andrew just let me know that he's left-handed, and that's news to me. So I appreciate you bringing that up in this forum. But no, I mean, I found myself kind of torn between a couple of things. I'll just frame the Phil conversation this way, right? So the first thing was, I mean, what's the greatest major championship win of all time, right? I mean, so as far as our lifetimes go, like, I mean, we're all mid to late 30s ish folks here, and I look at it like Tiger winning a couple years ago at the Masters. I mean, that's certainly up there. Tiger winning his first Masters in 1997 is up there. So where does this compare? I looked at it like this. Coming out of a pandemic, this was kind of I don't know if that was a full crowd in South Carolina at the Ocean Course this weekend, but I mean, there were some massive crowds following Phil around all weekend. And to me, that just reminded me of the Tiger days of just his swarms following him around. And I haven't seen anything like that, especially that scene on 18 when the security basically could not hold the crowd back. And I was worried that somebody was going to rip his left arm off.
Right.
He's left-handed.
And he is left-handed, and I appreciate you pointing that out again. But it just kind of brought me back a little bit to what's the greatest major championship that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. And I would say that it's probably a very close number 2 to Tiger winning a couple years ago.
It's
obviously the oldest. Obviously the oldest, golfer to ever win a major championship. Yeah. But there is nobody in their right mind that would have said the name Phil Mickelson at the beginning of the week. And to see him come through, and it wasn't like he was beating no names or anything like that. Brooks Koepka was chasing him all week. Bryson DeChambeau was chasing him all week. There's some others chasing him.
Like a really nice guy, by the way.
Right. Yeah. Really nice guy. Got another discussion about that. But I mean, it just watching him win. First of all, he looks like he's in the best shape of his life. Phil does. And it wasn't like it was fluky either. He was in good shape. He played better than everybody else out there. And at the end of the day, he was the best golfer for 4 days. And so I think that there's a little bit of nostalgia involved and everything, but he definitely earned it. It's not like he was a 50-year-old getting some lucky breaks or anything. He was hitting 315-yard drives, all the stuff that wins major championships, making the clutch putts, clutch shots, and everything like that. After he made that bunker shot on number 5 on Sunday, I was hooked for the next 3 hours. I'm not going to lie. So I just look at it as, where does it stand all time? It may be number 2 or 3, but I was captivated all day. Not sure what you guys think, but I was hooked.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive. I mean, it was nice. The nostalgia part, I told you, like, I don't really watch a whole lot of golf, but I at least turned it on. I was curious to watch it. I even had my son sitting with me watching it, and he was asking questions, and he just kept calling him the old guy. See the old guy? Are we rooting for the old guy? And I was like, yeah, buddy. Yeah, we're rooting for the old guy. And there was a certain part of that, even generationally, I guess, speaking, like, where it's like, yeah, you're right. Like, I remember watching him when I was starting to get into golf, and him versus Tiger. And it was kind of cool to root for him again and see him still have it. Andy?
I think there's some conversations to be had when you have these number 2 of our generation athletes like Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods. If there was no Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson would be as big as Tiger Woods. With all the stuff that he's done, he's only shadowed by Tiger Woods essentially in his playing career. It's very similar to just being overshadowed by somebody that's even greater.
Well, the only thing I'd say about like Tiger was, I mean, there was more to it than that. I mean, like breaking like racial barriers, and he was breaking. I mean, he was breaking some more barriers than what I think Phil was. And actually, that kind of leads me into our next topic of conversation. Simone Biles. There's a video of her doing it in pregame, and then actually in the competition, she's the first woman ever. And make sure I pronounce this right. To complete the Yurchenko double pike. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. We were talking about it pre-show. Absolutely incredible. She's the first woman to ever try to do it in competition. She lands it, and that was all phenomenal. But the bigger news behind it was the fact that she wasn't really rewarded for it. She was only given like a difficulty score of a 6.6, which is on par with everything else she's ever done. And so there was some major discussion behind it, basically saying, she's the only one who's ever attempted it in competition because it's so dangerous. And yet the difficulty score wasn't given, like, it was almost like as anything else has ever done. And at the end of it, they asked her, well, are you going to still do it if they're not going to reward you, these difficulty points? And she said, yes. And when they asked why, she said, because I can. So I was blown away by that response. I love that instinct from her. And the question, that always gets brought up, who's the greatest athlete of all time? So I guess I'm asking you guys on this, on the spot, is she your greatest athlete of all time?
Well, I'm going to start and just say that as far as the score goes, I think that's more of a referendum on what the judges may have expected from her. They expect greatness out of her. And so if another gymnast might have broken out that same move in the routine and landed it, it might have caught them off guard a little bit more. But because they know she's great, perhaps it's a referendum on the subjectivity of the scoring system in gymnastics. So I think that there's a discussion to be had about that. They expect greatness out of her. They saw it, even though it was something that's never been done before. It didn't catch them quite as off guard as it might have if it was somebody else. But I think there's still time to determine whether she's the greatest athlete of all time. She's only 24 years old right now. She's got a handful of gold medals, several gold medals at the world championship level. Right. I mean, certainly the greatest gymnast. I think that, as far as athletes go, it's a discussion that could be had. How do you compare different sports and everything like that over?
What about the scoring factor for it? I mean, is it fair that is she being penalized because she's so much better? I mean, we talked about Tiger and Phil. I mean, they had to change the course because of Tiger. And so that's, I think, an argument for him to be one of the greatest of all times. Now, I mean, she's almost got to do more just because she is so much better. Is that fair? Andy?
I think Joe brings up a good point where the referendum about this almost subjectivity of the scoring, where they feel different athletes should be weighted differently as far as their ability. If it's the first time anybody's ever attempted it or landed it, that alone says, great or not, she should have been given more difficulty points based on just the fact that nobody's done it before.
It's not like, I mean, I will say this. I love her. I'm a big fan of hers. I love the fact she had the goat on the back of her jersey and everything else. She didn't stick it. I mean, the landing itself, it wasn't like she, completely landed. Still incredibly impressive. It looks like a video game when she leaps. I mean, like the athleticism that she has is absolutely incredible. It's far above, all of her other competitors. But she still stumbled a little bit, but I still wish she would have been given more credit for taking a bigger attempt. It's almost like when, we reward football teams or reward sports teams, for going against up in competition. And, maybe they lose, but it was a close game. And we say, you know what, you at least tried it. I actually think this is a downer for the sport. I don't like the fact that they are not rewarding someone for trying to expand their game and make it more interesting.
Yeah, I think that it totally exposes the negative aspects of the subjectivity of the scoring system, right? Like you talked about Tiger, the PGA, tigerifying the courses and everything like that. At the end of the day, a birdie's a birdie, right? And there's nobody that can debate whether 3 shots is less than 4, like 3 shots is less than 4. There is subjectivity in the scoring of gymnastics. And so I think it would be hard to argue when she's pulling off something that no female gymnast has ever done, that even if she didn't stick it, I mean,
it's not because it's too easy,
It's not because it's too easy. And I mean, how could you deny that there's subjectivity in it? And I don't know how you rule subjectivity out of it in the current scoring system. So
I largely agree with what everybody said here. I think Joe made the right point about she's possibly the greatest gymnast of all time. I don't think she's in the greatest athlete of all time quite yet. I think she very well could be. We were talking ahead of this about, she's only 24, but somebody made the point in how old is that in gymnast years, right? I think she's still, she'll be in Tokyo. I think she still probably has one more in her after that. I think she's going to be up in their conversation, greatest gymnast all the time, and will be in that conversation of greatest athletes of all time. I just think when compared to even like, if we want to still look at female athletes like Venus and Serena, right?
Oh, that's true.
We can look at the Tom Brady's, we can look at the Jordans, but that's kind of apples and oranges still. But like even other female athletes like Venus and Serena are like, I think, still on another whole couple of levels from that. I think Simone Biles is incredible. in a sense, like this is gonna sound like kind of pejorative. I don't mean it to be. It seemed like it was easy, but I think that's because she made it look easy, right? Because she's just that
no
good.
way that's easy, you know.
No, and of course not.
Right.
But I wonder, like, because I watched it and I was like, well, what am I watching for? But I think that's just Simone Biles, right? She's just that freaking good,
right?
And I wonder if, like, you made the point about the subjectivity. I wonder if that doesn't just go into it, right? It's because she is so good and makes it seem so simple because she's that good. And like that shouldn't be a penalty to her either,
Right. I'd like to see her be rewarded. And I mean, I know we can get into the greatest, athlete of all time conversation. Oh, Andy, go ahead.
I think the scoring piece, I think the way that they try to fix it is when they do the old throw the highest and lowest scores out sometimes in those different subjective scores. I don't feel like that is
scores or whatever, but there's a difficulty meter or whatever. And forgive me, I don't know all the gymnast terms, but there's a difficulty meter where essentially, if you do attempt, you say you're going to attempt this, we're going to give you so many, credits, for doing that. And the fact that was on par with all the other stuff that all the other girls were doing isn't fair. I mean, that's not fair. It's not her fault that she's so damn good that they don't even know how to score her yet. I do think we're going to see some changes in this. I do think that we're going to see, them essentially, I don't know, Simone Bilesing the courses or changing, the scores, Joe.
One last point, I mean, on this is that I think the timing of it is interesting too, and the fact that it happens just a couple of months before the Olympics.
There's a lot of debate whether or not we're even going to have these Olympics.
Right, and I mean, let's assume that we do for a second. I mean, when the female gymnasts are doing their routines in Tokyo in 2021, this is going to be thought about, and try and get that out of the judges' minds, when this move is potentially pulled off again during the Olympics. It's just not going to be outside of their minds. And so I don't think you can argue. I don't think you can
handle this issue now instead of, change whatever you need to change, because I'm going to bust it out during the Olympics, and you're going to have to beat me with it,
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't think that I don't think that they can argue that this is not going to be on their minds if it isn't changed and talked about prior to the Olympics taking place in a couple of months.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, honestly, I think the timing of it is interesting because it was made very public. There was a lot of, she even did it in her like pre-routine, which I'm sure is, standard. You're going to practice what you're going to do. But even that had lots of views, and that I was kind of creating some buzz before she even went out there to go do it. I am impressed. The fact that you guys said it earlier, she's only 24 years old. And I know that's different, like in this years, but she could realistically, compete this year, compete next year in those, years in between. I do think it's a little unfair that we only see her typically every, 4 years. So I think that plays in our mind, because if we were seeing her every single day, just rocking, gold medal after gold medal after gold medal, I think it would be much easier to put her up in that all-time conversation. I mean, those conversations are also kind of interesting too, because you compare someone like a Jackie Robinson, who, was broke the color barrier. He was a, all-star baseball player. He also was like a Pac-10 point guard at UCLA. He also ran track and field and played football. I mean, like to me, that is someone who was probably my all-time greatest athlete. But we're comparing, how do you compare and how do you measure that? That's probably a different topic for a different day. We've got a few minutes left here. There was some NFL news I want to talk to you guys about with Julio Jones, where he came out, whether or not, he knew he was on camera or not. But it basically said he's not going to participate with the Falcons this year. He wants to be traded. The Falcons apparently are asking for a first-round pick. I just kind of wanted your guys' thoughts on like some possible places he'll need to go, because he does have kind of a high cap number. I think there's only 15 teams, which is about half the teams in the NFL that can afford to even have him on their team. Would you guys make a play for him? Do you think this is getting obnoxious that the players are asking for these trades, whenever they want? Just kind of wanted your initial thoughts.
My initial thought is that it's really, really irritating if I'm the Falcons general manager, because the fact that he does this after the draft, when all these teams that may be receiver needy have maybe drafted receivers. I think of like Baltimore, who went out and drafted Rashad Bateman in the first round. They might have wanted him 2 months ago, and now their perspective is completely different, and they may not want to take on a big contract, right? And so that's my initial reaction is like, I'm fairly irritated if I'm the Falcons, because he could have done this 2 months ago and been in a completely different position, put the organization in a different position and everything else like that,
Counterpoint, they could have traded him before the draft.
Yeah, but was he vocal? I mean, we don't know. Was he?
He doesn't have to be, right? Like back in my day, the general manager decided when they wanted to trade a player, right? So if they didn't think that 32 or 3-year-old Julio Jones, coming off of probably major lower body surgery, was in their long-term plans, maybe they should have looked at what kind of assets they could have gotten back pre-draft.
They may have looked at it, but they also may be thinking that they're rewarding a guy who's been a part of the organization since the day they drafted him. Matt Ryan, they could have traded as well, but they're organizationally, don't you want to reward these guys and not trade them, later in their career? I mean, I guess you talk to them and find out.
Yeah, I think that last point. Sorry, Andy. I think that last point is it. I think if you really are thinking about it and you don't want to, piss a guy off on the way out the door, then sure, you have the conversation with him. And I think the market is different for Julio. They don't want for Matt Ryan, but that's a different conversation. Go ahead, Andy.
Well, I think regardless of, I'm with Joe. I don't think he should have waited this late into the offseason, really, even though there's still free agency and all that stuff. I think regardless of who initiates it, if I'm a team that can afford to have a Julio Jones and I'm, wide receiver needy, I'm going to do what I can without breaking my back necessarily for the next 10 years as far as cap space goes or trade or picks goes. He's worth a first round pick, I think, as far as receivers go.
Probably depends on where you're at. I don't know if I give a first rounder, but if I'm, maybe a Green Bay, someone who's kind of on the Colts are actually a team that I look at that I think would be kind of a good fit for him.
I saw Darren Hopkins was trying to get him to go out to Arizona.
Oh my God! Could you imagine that if he went out to Arizona? I mean, that team would have the greatest wide receiving core that's ever put together 5 years ago. But I mean, I don't know how much money would be in that Arizona locker room, just in the wide receivers corner of the locker room. It would be absolutely insane. I mean, Kyler Murray though would be flying up those fantasy draft boards. What do you got? I mean, would you give up first rounder? I mean, if you're the Jets, I mean, like.
I probably would not for 30. Now the counter argument is going to be like Mo Sanu got the second round pick 2 years ago, but like I can probably around, but I don't know. I guess at that point, what's the difference? I think it's like you said. I think you have to be a contender, somebody like the Colts. I also with J Brown and so like that's
you're breaking up a little bit, Andy or Andrew. Are you guys seeing that too?
Yeah, we are. I'll just add on to that and say, hey, you know what? I'd be just extra annoyed with him if I'm the Falcons because, hey, I feel like we've done right by. If I'm the Falcons general manager, I've done right by him for however many years he's been in the league, and now he's putting me in a position where I have no leverage going out to these other teams, right? And so they've already drafted receivers if they need them, and now you're acting like you're irritated playing for the only organization that you played with. And so I'm extra annoyed and kind of I don't want to hamstring the organization, but I also don't want to give him what he wants at the same time,
Right. Well, one of the solutions I saw, I believe it was Teddy Bruschi who was talking about it, or one of those old Patriots guys was saying that he thought a good fit would be to send him to Green Bay for Jordan Love. It gives Atlanta their young, quarterback. It gives Green Bay the extra receiver that Rodgers apparently wants, out there. Although according to the Kenny Mayne piece, that's not completely it. But either way, it seems like it'd be a pretty good fit, for him to go out there, get a chance to win a championship, which is apparently the rumors. What he says that he wants to do is try to win a championship. He's not going to do it in Atlanta. These next couple of seasons. And he's probably realistically got 2 to 3 seasons left. One probably very productive, one productive, and then 3 maybe as a role player. If that's how he wants to end his career. Would you do that deal?
Not knowing what Jordan Love has on the table, and based on the fact that they're signing Blake Bortles, they don't have a lot of faith in Jordan Love. So I would be like, nope, I need to see something out of Jordan Love first.
This is from the same pretend GM that tried to trade Kirk Cousins for Jared Goff.
Tried to, but the one GM wouldn't do it. Not getting the first round pick for it. Absolutely. No, can you hear? Can you? What do you?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got you. I don't know if I'm gonna go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're fading out. I'm sorry, pal.
No, that's all right. That's how I roll.
Yeah, it's okay. Gentlemen, we are running out of time here. So I'm going to raise a nice Mully's brew to you. Oh yeah, Andy's got his as well. We've got the bullets out there, and but nothing is
Stuff they got going on here.
nothing. Yeah, nothing's competing here. Once again, thanks to our pals Mully's. If you want to check out one of their great brews, you can check them out on Instagram at Mully's Brewery, or check out their Facebook page under Mully's Brewery. And if you are in the Southern Maryland area and you are looking for, a choice beverage, that's what you're going to do. Gentlemen, I'm going to, like I said, raise it to you again. And you guys have an absolute wonderful week.